Hello, Ames Chamber of Commerce members. This is Drew Camp, Vice President of the Ames Chamber of Commerce, coming to you for our March 20th weekly legislative update. I will tell you that this one, as you can imagine, is going to be a little bit different than normal. Obviously, with the legislative session being canceled for the foreseeable future, postponed, I should say, for the foreseeable future. I will touch on that as well as some other state and federal issues that I want to make sure we cover to make sure that you're getting some accurate information and also being kept apprised of what's happening at the state and local level. First off, I do want to start by wishing you all well. I hope you all are doing well in kind of these challenging times. It's kind of a new normal, but I really do hope and send my best wishes for myself and everyone at the Chamber that you're doing well as we all are coping through and working through this process. I did want to start off by just touching on kind of the grand total of the cases. You hear a lot about that, but I just wanted to touch really quick on what's occurred so far in Iowa. The most recent information from the Department of Public Health from the Iowa Department of Public Health shows that there's 44 total cases, 25 female and 19 male. They're kind of spread throughout the state. There hasn't been, knock on wood, an official case in Story County, but there are in a number of counties throughout the state, and about a dozen of them or so. And we do continue to see those rise as more testing occurs. I did also want to touch on just the federal number of cases at the U.S. level as well. Currently, Johns Hopkins, within their database that they have a really good information set within their Coronavirus Resource Center. There's currently, as of about 9:43, 14,250 cases in the U.S., so that's just something that we continue to monitor as well. As far as with the Johns Hopkins Center, and as of now, the most recent with an update just before 11, there's 14,250 cases in the U.S. So I did just want to touch on those and just let you know kind of what we're seeing as far as those trends. We do continue to see those go up as more testing occurs. I did want to let you know as we kind of jump into some of the policy pieces. We'll start with some of the state policy. There's quite a bit to go through. I'll move through it as judiciously as I can, but I did want to let you know that the governor did this morning sign an additional state public health emergency declaration, and she will hold a press conference again today at 2 p.m. to provide some additional information. The important key information that the declaration covered is it relaxed a number of restrictions and regulations and provides relief from other states and statutes and regulations. And just some of the things that it really hit on was it temporarily suspends collection of property taxes and penalties and interest associated with that. It temporarily suspends some evictions under the Iowa Uniform Residential Landlord and Tenant Act or the Manufactured Home Communities or Mobile Home Parks Residential Landlord and Tenant Acts in certain circumstances. It extends the expiration date for permit to carry and permit to acquire a firearm and additional measures. It permits the sale of delivery, carry out, and drive-through of alcohol for unopened bottles of alcohol for bars and restaurants, and suspends some fees to give them an additional revenue source. It permits public meetings or hearings by electronic means to improve the functions of government while maintaining social distancing practices and also keeping below 10 people in any gathering. It suspends certain regulations to ease the transportation of agricultural supplies and commodities, food, medical supplies, cleaning products, and other household goods on all highways in Iowa. And it also allows state agencies to implement the state's public health emergency plan. So that was just done this morning. That's the most recent thing we've heard from her. We anticipate that being the most recent thing we'll hear until her press conference today at 2 o'clock. The governor also, I noted how the legislative session in the legislature has postponed, they said for 30 days, but kind of indefinitely, and they gave the governor some additional abilities and some additional flexibilities within the state budget and the use of the emergency funds that the state has up to 10% to really kind of continue for continuity of governance. But then also they did pass a resolution that would allow, if we need to, come July 1st when the new fiscal year starts, we would just continue with a continuing resolution similar to what we see at the federal level where the current FY 2020 budget numbers proceed and continue into FY 2021. But the governor did also sign earlier this week Senate File 2408, which is the Supplemental Appropriations and Emergency Measures, which was passed by the legislature upon their postponement. I just wanted to cover a few things that included. It provides a supplemental appropriation to Medicaid of $88.98 million. It also provides a supplemental appropriation for other health programs of $1.8 million, a supplemental appropriation for the state hygienic lab, which is doing a lot of the testing of $525,000. It limits some standing appropriations, which are non-public school transportation, instructional support, and area education association funding. It requires the Department of Management and the Legislative Service Agency to review FY 2020 appropriations and make appropriations for the first 2 months of FY 2021, which would be July and August. And with regards to transfers, it includes exemptions from transfer rules for the emergency fund. It makes emergency appropriations from the fund, the emergency rainy day fund, so to speak, of up to 10% to the Department of Management for purposes approved by the governor through August 31st. That's that 2-month period once again. And it includes various repeal dates. And for schools, it authorizes the governor to waive school instructional time requirements for schools that close due to the COVID-19 virus. Another thing I wanted to make sure that I touched on with regards to state policy is that she did issue just a couple days ago also the state public health disaster emergency that did do a few things with regards to restaurants and bars and gatherings. I think we're all pretty well aware of what those did. It really closed down restaurants and bars except for their carry-out, drive-through, and delivery basis. It is recommended that if a restaurant or bar is moving towards kind of those delivery mechanisms, do make sure you're reaching out to your insurance provider and making sure that you have the appropriate coverages and that you're able to do that and protect yourself if you're moving towards that avenue. So do make sure you're reaching out to those individuals to make sure that you are covered and you're doing so in a safe manner. Fitness centers, all fitness centers are closed until for the foreseeable future until we get through this. Theaters, same thing. Casinos and gaming facilities, same things once again. With regards to social gatherings and events of more than 10 people, they're all prohibited at locations and venues. Things such as festivals, parades, conventions, all those things, they're all postponed until after the disasters declared past. Senior citizen centers and adult daycare facilities, so nursing homes, assisted living, independent living facilities with elderly, which are obviously a targeted or high risk, I should say, demographic for COVID-19. Those facilities are hereby closed, and all those facilities have really kind of gone into lockdown for preventative measures, which is certainly understandable. The governor has announced, in partnership with Iowa Workforce Development, assistance for employers and employees affected by COVID-19. Some of the things that are really important to note have to do with unemployment benefits, as you can imagine. I just wanted to highlight kind of 3 major things. The declaration did really say workers who stay home to self-isolate or to care for their families will be eligible to receive unemployment benefits as long as they meet other eligibility requirements. All that information is available online. We have links on our website, so make sure you're going there and accessing those. It does also include caring for children because of school school or daycare closures. In addition, full or part-time employees who employers closed because of COVID-19 will also be eligible for unemployment benefits. And as we noted, the employers will not be liable or have to cover those costs for those unemployment benefits if it's related to COVID-19 for, say, like in the restaurant and food service industry. The agency is temporarily dropping the requirements for unemployed Iowans to search for work while receiving benefits. And they will, Iowa Workforce Development will also look for ways to address instances in which employees, mostly those working at a business, don't meet the qualifying wage requirements to receive benefits, but might if previous employment is included. So they're really working through some of the intricate details and some of the limitations that we may face to make sure that we can continue to provide assistance through unemployment, not only to employees, but also provide some assistance to employers as well, as we make sure that people are covered and being taken care of as they work through this COVID-19 outbreak. I did also want to touch on the fact that the governor has reached out and is seeking donations of personal protective equipment. These are things like the N95 masks, gloves, and gowns. There's a great need for these items in the healthcare profession and throughout Iowa. So if you are interested in donating, whether you're an individual, a business, a large manufacturer, it does not matter the size or the scope of your operations, reach out to the County Emergency Management Agency. That's going to be Keith Morgan and Melissa Spencer with Story County. We'll make sure that information is available, their contact information, but do make sure you're reaching out to them if you do have things that you need to donate with regards to personal protective equipment to make sure we're taking care of these critical healthcare providers during this time. The next item I do want to touch on, as I said, there's quite a bit that's been going on, as you can imagine. The Iowa Department of Revenue has extended the filing and payment deadlines for income tax and other tax types to July 31st. And they've also extended income tax withholding deposit due dates until April 10th of 2020. Those are all subject to change, obviously, but that is the most current information with regards to that. One thing the governor did as well is she signed a bill expanding the role of physician assistants, which obviously, as you can imagine, with a pandemic going on, is obviously very important. What that does is it allows them to have full prescriptive rights. It gives them legal protections similar to other healthcare providers, and it provides them the ability to be reimbursed by Medicaid and a range of other changes, allowing them to better serve patients, especially as we see a spike in care. A couple other items I just wanted to touch on to make sure people are aware. As you can imagine, the Capitol is closed to the public through at least March 31st. The Iowa Department of Transportation has delayed driver's license renewals if expired January 17th or later until after the COVID-19 outbreak is done. And then the Iowa Secretary of State's office has closed the lobby and encourages online filings for anyone needing to do so. And of importance, especially important, this is the last item I want to cover on the state side, to our local community. It's so important due to the amount of activity and the amount of business that we see during the spring commencement for the backbone of our community that is Iowa State University. They have canceled their spring commencement, and they are extending virtual learning to the end of the semester. And the Iowa Board of Regents President, Mike Richards, has declared an emergency and waived additional leave rules for staff. We will include additional information on that if you need to read up on that in the links that will be provided with this update as well. Moving into the federal piece, there's also, as you can imagine, there's been a lot of activity at the federal level as well. I just wanted to highlight some of the assistance pieces that have been put into place. There's 2 phases that have been put into place, and a 3rd phase that you've probably heard that the Congress is working on right now that has not been passed. I'll start with phase 1, which passed on March 6th. That's the $8.3 billion assistance. And what that really did is it provided funding for the Center for Disease Control, the Food and Drug Administration, the National Institute for Health, the State Department, Small Business Administration, and USAID. And the amount of money as far as how that was appropriated is about $4 billion for test and $1 billion for loan subsidies. And that was passed, like I said, about 2 weeks ago. On Wednesday this week, the Senate did pass the phase 2 bill, and that was $104 billion, and that was on a 90-8 vote. Broader phase 3 aid bill is expected to pass the Senate by the end of the day today. But the bill that did pass and has been enacted into law that passed on Wednesday, the $104 billion provision, some of the key things that it included is it included free testing related to COVID-19, that it provided $1 billion in health savings accounts to pay for uninsured and underinsured. And Wellmark, it's also important to note, Wellmark is covering at no cost and waiving telehealth fees and costs associated with testing and coverage and care for COVID-19. It expands the bill passed on Wednesday, expands the Family and Medical Leave Act for small businesses under 500 employees and does provide an exemption for 50 or less. It provides paid emergency sick leave for small businesses under 500 employees and also has exemptions for those under 50. It's important to note that there are 100% tax credits equal to the amount of wages required to be paid by employers via sick leave provisions. And what the idea is employers can use the money they withhold from paychecks to pay for their sick leave rather than remitting those funds to the government. And the goal with these tax credits and those provisions is to make it net revenue neutral to employers as they work to provide and make sure that those employees are receiving that sick time. It also, the $104 billion bill passed on Wednesday, provides additional unemployment benefits to states experiencing an increase of 10% or more in unemployment. And that's $1 billion for grants nationwide to help cover those issues that may arise. It also provides additional food assistance for those in need. It's $900 million for SNAP, WIC, and school-age children, and $250 million for elderly needing food assistance. It provides additional protections for healthcare workers if they themselves are personally sick. And it provides 6.2% increase from the federal government for increased Medicaid claims. And that's really to assist states as they work to provide those claims, as that's kind of a partnership between the federal and state government. I do want to note, as I mentioned, that phase 2 bill that I just noted, that has been passed. That's something that is in law. It's been enacted into law. It's been signed by the president. Phase 3, I cannot emphasize this enough. It is still in the works. It has not passed. This is something that's tentative, and this is simply an outline that still has to be passed by the Senate, passed by the House, and signed into law by the president. But I did just want to give you an idea of what it kind of is being talked about and what they still are needing to iron out today and through the weekend. The Phase 3 bill will focus on 4 primary areas: small business assistance, direct financial assistance for Americans, assistance for impacted industries, and boosting the public health response to the coronavirus. Like I said, they'll continue through today and into the weekend. And it's important to note that the Senate, when they take this up, it will require 60 votes for cloture to move forward. And I can't emphasize enough, this is still in negotiation. This has not passed. Some of the key provisions that this bill would provide, or is being spoken about or outlined and debated as to what it will provide, is $250 billion in direct payments to taxpayers on April 6th and May 18th, $300 billion in small business loans to employers with less than 500 employees, $50 billion to assist the airline industry, $150 billion for other industries, and also some assistance to shore up money market mutual funds. And as again, you can notice, I'm getting on a theme here. This is not passed. It is still in negotiations. We will make sure we continue to keep you updated as this moves forward and it does pass and get signed into law and what changes are made. But please do note that this is all still very tentative and has not passed the Congress, has not been signed into law. The next thing I want to touch on is that the president has invoked the Defense Production Act. And what that allows is it allows the administration to force American industries to manufacture necessary medical supplies to assist in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. This goes back to the governor's plea to provide some of those items via donation, but this would allow manufacturers to really assist in ramping up our production of those items. We're kind of on the front end of that and seeing some activity now, but we need to continue to see that move in an expedited fashion to make sure that those that are on the front lines have the equipment and the products that they need. The administration is also expanding telehealth benefits to Medicare recipients. The Treasury, this is an important note for a lot of people. The Treasury has moved the tax filing deadline to July 15th. So please note that for your federal taxes, the Treasury has moved the filing deadline for federal income taxes to July 15th. Canada and the U.S. have planned to close the border to non-essential travel. There is conversations about that at the Mexico border as well. Those remain to be ongoing conversations. One thing I did want to note as well is I have to note that this is very much in the early stages, but it is just very encouraging, and I wanted to make sure I shared this as well. Researchers have administered the first dose in a clinical trial for a potential coronavirus vaccine. It is very, very important to note that while this shows promise and it's a positive, the full version is very likely not to be available for 12 to 18 months. This goes along the lines of what Dr. Fauci has been saying, but I did just want to share that they are moving judiciously and expeditiously on that front. But like I said, it will not be available probably till 12 to 18 months. The last thing I wanted to touch on is 2 more things actually, but the State Department has urged U.S. citizens to avoid all international travel. That means they've moved it up to a level 4 travel advisory, and they're instructing Americans not to travel internationally and urging anyone who is abroad to return home amid this pandemic. And then also obviously make sure they're taking the necessary precautions to self-quarantine and social distance. I also wanted to share, this is a really, really big news for our small businesses. We did receive word this morning that the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loans, Iowa has been declared eligible for those. You can go online to their website and start working on your application for those disaster loans. That's really, really important to our small businesses. So please, if that's something you filled out the worksheet earlier in this week to make sure you are showing the impact, you've been filling out the surveys, please make sure you're going on to the SBA website. We'll include a link that you need to go to move forward with that, and make sure you begin the application process to get some of that economic emergency assistance funding during this critical time for your business. With that, I will shore up and kind of end the update by just saying, please do remain calm, spread calmness, spread positivity. We're all in this together. We can overcome anything as if we do it in a unifying force. So please just recall that, remember that, and remain positive and spread calmness as we work through all this. We're all in this together, and we're all here for each other. The Ames Chamber of Commerce is here for you. For anything you may need, please feel free to reach out to us. We're here for you. We will do everything we can to get you the information that you need to make it through these challenging times as we all work together to battle this COVID-19 outbreak. So with that, I will conclude our update for the week. And please do, again, reach out to us if you have if we can be of assistance in any way. And please do be safe and take care of yourself and have a nice weekend. Thank you. Bye.